Welcome to a new episode of Thoughts and Bolts. I'm your host, Pedro Laveria, and today's episode is titled OSAP Never Ended. It Converted to Kona Blue by Dr. Jim Lakatski. Yes, Dr. Jim Lakatski, the former director of OSAP, just came out with a new book. So this episode is a celebration of that. And I do mean celebration because I do like his books. And I think as the former head of a DIA UFO program, anytime he puts out a book for peanuts, it's a celebration. I think Lakatsky is probably one of the straightest shooters in this field with the most knowledge. And so I bought the book and I'm reading it right now. But in celebration of this new book, I want to do another AI assisted esoteric reading along the method used by Leo Strauss. Leo Strauss was a political philosopher who developed a method for reading between the lines. Esoteric writers, like certain philosophers like Maimonides and Spinoza and Plato, and for that matter, anybody who has a security clearance and is talking about the UFO phenomenon, they have to think of two audiences, right? The many and the few, right? The few are the people in on the secrets, right? And the many is the rest of us. The few they have to worry about with regards to crossing any lines, but the few can also just be people like you and me who have had our own individual disclosures, so to speak, and are like deep into this subject and have read almost everything and are able to read between the lines, right? Um, so the many and the few. Oh, so let's go. Let's get started. Look, here is my prompt, my big, beautiful prompt that I will share in the description for you. Yes, this is a real prompt designed to have an AI like Claude or ChatGPT do a reading of the Kona Blue Slides as if they were Leo Strauss. I used Claude, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Grok for this little experiment. You can use whatever you want. I also use Perplexity, but for this episode, I'm only going to share the Gemini version just because Google Gemini gave the shortest product, right? And I want to keep this kind of short. So look, let's begin reading. Let me move this little thing here that you can't see, but I can. That way I'm not interrupted. In accordance with the hermeneutic principles established by Leo Strauss, the following is a rigorous interpretation of the Kona Blue slide deck. This analysis treats the document as a masterwork of bureaucratic esotericism, designed to navigate the permanent tension between a radical truth and the city, i.e., the legislative and executive oversight bodies. Exoteric reading. Remember, the first step in this Straussian hermeneutic is to read at surface level, extremely literally, and get that pinned down first. So let's go. Literally, this document is a pre-decisional funding proposal for a prospective Department of Homeland Security special access program titled Kona Blue. Its stated purpose is the advanced technology threat identification. The program aims to investigate emerging and or disruptive scientific data and materials to anticipate threats to the U.S. homeland. The research is organized into four centers. The Data Collection and Analysis Center, focused on sightings and physical evidence within the U.S. and its adjacent oceans. Advanced Technology Center, focused on analyzing recovered materials and earlier assessments. Consciousness Center, focused on consciousness studies and remote sensing to determine technology intent. Technology Application/Integration Center, a focal point for reporting and follow-on research. The document cites congressional interest, Senators Reid and Inouye, and positions the work as a successor to the Advanced Threat Identification Program. It requests a scaling budget starting at 12 million and projects the need for secure facilities, SCIFs, and specific personal cover. Identification of anomalies and signals. To the careful reader, several signals indicate that the esoteric surface threat assessment masks a more radical esoteric core. The beach imagery, slides 1 and 2. In a top secret document concerning advanced technology threats, the use of a serene beach photograph is a conspicuous anomaly. Per Strauss, this serves a dual purpose. It provides a reassuring surface for the uninitiated, suggesting the Kona of the title is merely a geographical code, while signaling a calculated silence regarding the actual, potentially disturbing nature of the materials. The loaded term unique origin, slide 3. The text specifies materials of unique origin, engineering, and purpose in a bureaucratic context. Unique is a radical departure from foreign or adversarial. This signal suggests the origin is not merely international, but outside the known categories of human engineering. And that might be the really important sentence that Lakatski had mentioned in the weaponized podcast. Okay. So this use of the term unique origin, engineering, and purpose. So yeah, if you read down at the bottom paragraph, it says the department's interest area with this project targets is the scientific and technical investigation, threat analysis, and assessment of materials and data of unique origin, engineering, and purpose. The knowledge gap this research is addressing is emerging or disruptive materials and technologies that can potentially impact national power and security. Okay, so that's very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, the insertion of temporal translation, slide 4. This phrase is tucked into a list of relatively mundane technical goals. The inclusion of temporal translation alongside weaponry is a deliberate contradiction of the document's stated basic applied research scope. It is the most radical claim, stated only once and buried in the center. Now we will revisit this at the near the end of the episode. But yeah, temporal translation. Gemini interprets this as time manipulation, and I will show you later that Gemini is right about that. The oral histories requirement. Research into advanced technology typically requires physicists and engineers. The specific requirement to collect oral histories from retired military intelligence and contractor personnel to assist in locating technology is a signal that the technology is already recovered but hidden within dispersed or unacknowledged archipelago of private contractors. The medical division's collateral injuries, slide 8. The mention of collateral injuries, physiological effects to family members of those who interact with the vehicles is a meaningful silence. The oral histories requirement, slide 9. Now, you'll notice that if you look on the screen, it says slide 8. That's because this is Gemini is using the Adobe Acrobat numbering for the slides because what is it? AARO added an extra page at the beginning as an intro. So when it says slide 9, it's really referring to slide 8 on the Kona Blue doc. But you can just read it for yourself. The oral histories requirement. Research into advanced technology typically requires physicists and engineers. The specific requirement to collect oral histories from retired military intelligence and contractor personnel to assist in locating technology is a signal that the technology is already recovered, but hidden within a dispersed or unacknowledged archipelago of private contractors. The medical divisions, collateral injuries. The mention of collateral injuries slash physiological effects to family members of those who interact with the vehicles is a meaningful silence. It suggests a non-local or contagion-like threat that contradicts the physical, mechanical threat model presented on the surface. The bureaucratic camouflage. The sudden shift to the technology readiness assessment process and legal citations, Section 308, functions as bureaucratic camouflage. It anchors the radical esoteric goals, consciousness center, temporal translation, in the exoteric language of mundane administrative law to satisfy the city. The esoteric reading. Okay, the hidden teaching. Reassembling these signals reveals the hidden teaching. The Kona Blue proposal is not a plan to search for a threat, but a plan to institutionalize the study of a non-human reality already in the possession of the Shadow City, the contractor slash intelligence complex. The authors are not proposing a new discovery. They are proposing a transfer of custody from unacknowledged channels to a formalized DHS structure. The advanced technology is the esoteric center. It is described not as a weapon of foreign power, but as a phenomenology. You can see that on slide 5 or slide 4 on your screen. The inclusion of the consciousness center is the key to the entire structure. The esoteric layer suggests that the advanced technology is not merely mechanical, but psychophysical. The use of remote sensing to determine the activity and purpose of the technology implies that the technology itself responds to or operates via consciousness. The threat is not just to border incursion, but a threat to the moral, psychosocial, social cohesion of the United States. The authors are attempting to educate the worthy reader, the few, right? The authors are attempting to educate the worthy reader, the Deputy Secretary, SAPOC, that the national power of the United States depends on mastering a technology that violates the vulgar understanding of physics and biology. The project is waived and unacknowledged because the truth that the technology is already here, is partially psychic in nature, would destroy the moral psychosocial fabric if released to the many. I'm going to read that one again. The authors are attempting to educate the worthy reader that the national power of the United States depends on mastering a technology that violates the vulgar or common understanding of physics and biology. The project is waived and unacknowledged because the truth that the technology is already here and is partially psychic in nature would destroy the moral psychosocial fabric if released to the many. Okay, and you can read that here, right here, slide 5 or 4 on the screen. Evidence and rigor. Rule of central placement. Temporal translation appears in slide 4. The exact center of the research center's description. This follows the Straussian rule that the most radical claim is placed in the center to be overlooked by the vulgar reader. This is true. When I first read this, I never noticed the term temporal translation. Rule of deliberate contradiction. Slide 6, okay, claims No defined applied research efforts are specifically identified. Yet, slide 8 gives a detailed experimental division plan for a primary location that has been researched for approximately 15 years. This would be Skinwalker Ranch. This contradiction signals that the research is already mature and the proposal is a formality for funding an ongoing concern. We know this. Rule of meaningful silence. Slide 15 features a large curved gray arrow from DHS to Company Z. There is no text explaining this arrow. In the Straussian sense, this is a meaningful silence indicating a sovereign funnel, where the oversight body, DHS, exists to sustain the unacknowledged contractor. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. I'm going to read that again. This is a meaningful silence indicating a sovereign funnel, where the oversight body, Department of Homeland Security, exists to sustain the unacknowledged contractor. Whoa. That puts the cart before the horse, in my opinion, right? But that's wow, that's interesting. This identifies the public agency not as the master, but as the resource conduit for the esoteric project, signaling that the city has been successfully weaponized to serve the hidden core. Interesting. Whoa. So what it's essentially saying is that the military industrial complex is running the show here, and that the government is at their service, not the other way around. It's a very interesting take from Gemini regarding this PowerPoint slide. Rule of repetition within variation. The advanced technology threat title is repeated on every slide. That is true, by the way. It's on every slide. Okay. The advanced technology threat title is repeated on every slide, but the description of that threat shifts from scientific data. Okay, slide 2. It shifts from scientific data to recovered advanced technology in slide 9. The variation reveals the truth. The threat is a physical object already in hand. I'm going to read that again. Okay. The advanced technology threat title is repeated on every slide. Yes, it is. Okay. It's repeated on every slide. But the description of that threat shifts from scientific data, okay, page 2, okay, scientific data, scientific and technical data, okay, to recovered advanced technology, slide 9, okay, where it says right there, access recovered advanced technology and any earlier assessments to determine threat capability and any potential countermeasures possible against the advanced technology, okay? And lower down it says, collect oral histories to assist in locating additional recovered advanced technology. Okay. So I'm going to repeat again. Sorry. The description of that threat shifts from scientific data to recovered advanced technology. The variation reveals the truth. The threat is a physical object already in hand. And isn't that what David Grush has told us? Isn't that what Lakatski has told us? Okay. We're not talking about finding a UFO. We're talking about a UFO from crash retrievals, in the possession of Lockheed Martin or TRW, or TRW that's already in our possession. Okay. And that is the threat. The thing we own is the threat. That's what Gemini is saying. Okay. And maybe Gemini is wrong. Okay. Keep in mind, I had to do this twice because she had misread the direction of the arrow the first time I did this. So I told her to write that again because she got the direction of the arrow wrong, and she did. But still, this is very interesting reading. Okay. The threat is the thing they own. Okay. The thing Lockheed has, the thing TRW has. That's the threat. Okay. Now, slide 15. Where are we at? Oh, we already read that. Okay, so look, final conclusion. The author's true intention was to create a legal vessel for a reality that could not be exoterically acknowledged, that means openly acknowledged, the existence of non-human technology that interfaces with human consciousness. I'm going to read that again. The author's true intention was to create a legal vessel for a reality that cannot be exoterically acknowledged, the existence of non-human technology that interfaces with human consciousness. They chose the Straussian technique of bureaucratic esotericism to protect the program from persecution, i.e., defunding or public exposure, while signaling its importance to those within the need to know circle. The document illuminates the permanent Straussian problem of the truth versus the city. Okay. Now that's interesting. Remember, Socrates, he had to drink the hemlock, right? He wasn't an esoteric writer like his disciple Plato, right? Socrates taught what he taught openly, and the city, Athens, made him drink poison, right? Because they said he was corrupting the youth. So that's the struggle between the truth and the city. The document illuminates the permanent Straussian problem of the truth versus the city. If the truth is that the fundamental nature of reality involves temporal translation and consciousness interface technology, the city, i.e., the state, cannot remain stable under that knowledge. Therefore, the master practitioners of the bureaucracy must write between the lines using funding tables and organizational charts as the modern veil to ensure that the radical remains unacknowledged yet funded. Now, this whole thing about this will make the state unstable. You know, that's why I've been doing the whole Prometheus and Atlas series, right? What we're looking at here is the spectral revolution. Okay, you know, the melding of consciousness with technology, mind and matter. Okay, no more binary mind versus matter, but they exist. Mind and matter exist in a spectrum, right? Um, these kind of things undermine the binaries that every culture organizes itself around. Um, and that's why psi is always pushed in the corner. Okay, it was pushed in the corner when people believed in it. Okay, that's what the Salem witch trials were. That's what all the witch burnings in Europe were. People knew that there was technique for human beings to do things that are miraculous, but they didn't like that. That undermines the binaries, right? Of God, Satan, heaven, hell, male, female, spirit, matter. All these beautiful binaries, good, evil, that we organize our society around, right? Those things undermine that, so they're pushed into a corner or burned at the stake, right? And in this case, some kind of UFO technology that uses consciousness, that some machine that is in some sense psychophysical, right? Undermines those binaries upon which our culture's ontology is based, right? Hence ontological shock. Okay. Now let's go back to the temporal translation thing. So I had to go back into some other books by Lakatski, namely this one, Initial Revelations, his second book, which he wrote with Colm Kelleher and George Knapp. As you know, George Knapp is the OG of UFO reporting, professional UFO reporting, and also Colm Kelleher was the operations manager of OSAP. And if you read the book, they talk about temporal translation, and it has everything to do with time alteration. Remember, we go back to Al Puthoff's paper, right? Where he talks about engineering the space-time metric. Any kind of craft that uses an engineered space-time metric, a warp bubble, time is going to go much faster on the inside than it does on the outside. And so you have these rumors that there's a craft. Well, that forget the rumors of a craft. Okay, all these experiencers, these abductees, a lot of them talk about how the craft was bigger on the inside than it was on the outside. Right? That's a spatial translation, right? It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Spatial translation. But the temporal translation would be that time goes faster on the inside than it does on the outside. So let's say hypothetically, and I am saying hypothetically because I don't know. I'm going on rumors, stuff Danny Sheehan said, stuff that some anonymous redditor who took pictures from a talk David Grush gave to rich people in New York. Um, According to him, and according to Danny Sheehan, there's a craft that we're in possession of that it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Okay. And if that's true, then that means time is going faster on the inside than it is on the outside because the same mechanism, this space-time metric engineering that causes the craft to be bigger on the inside than it is on the outside would cause time to go faster on the inside than it does on the outside. So let's say you're a government worker, one of these scientists, you go in, on your watch, you spent an hour in there doing your experiments. You come out, and everybody else's watch says you've only been in there 10 minutes, right? The clock on the wall says you've only been in there 10 minutes, but your watch says you've been there an hour. That's a time alteration. That's a temporal translation that has to take place in order for you to understand what just happened, right? Your 10 minutes is my 1 hour. Okay. So my big as a football field is your Winnebago size UFO. Okay. So one aspect of this is the time alteration. That's what it means by temporal translation. One of the things it means is it refers to one of many things, one of them being time alteration. The other thing it refers to is time machines. Okay. This is in the book. These are exact quotes from the book. I don't have the page because I have the Kindle version. Okay. But this is in the second Lakatski book. It's held out as a possibility. I have to be honest, time travel is one of the things I just have a visceral reaction against, but it is a part of my personal UFO theory. If you watch my video, UFO of Man, you'll see that. I have a visceral reaction against it, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, right? So that's what we're talking about with time interval, right? Or temporal translation. Okay, we're talking about time alteration, which we would expect based on Puthoff's paper, but we may also be talking about time machines. Okay. And one interesting thing I found in preparing for this episode was this paper found in the Journal of Scientific Exploration. I love this periodical. They have like peer-reviewed scientific papers on all things weird, right? Parapsychology, all kinds of fringe archaeology, that kind of stuff. But it's really good. I love it. Um, and I found a paper on temporal translation of matter and its connection to psychic phenomenon. So in this paper, which I need to reread because it's a little over my head, but I did read it. Basically, what the author was saying is like, look, there's overwhelming evidence for psychic ability, right? People can, under certain conditions, see into the future. So data, if information can go backwards in time, and then he leverages, so information can go backwards in time. That's what would have to happen if seeing the future is real. And it is real. I mean, there's so many anecdotes of it all over every culture, right? I mean, people see in the future sometimes, okay? If information can go back in time, okay, information can go back in time, then what else could go back in time? Well, then he leverages Wheeler's whole thing of it from bit. So if, you know, the underlying, structure of all space, time, matter, and energy is digital, computational, informational, right? It from bit, then that would mean that matter could also go back in time. Okay. And again, he says this is speculative, but what I really liked about this paper, what little I understood, was that he connects psychic stuff with backwards in time travel, with material stuff. Okay. Um, that there's a relationship, that the fact that information can go back in time with regards to foresight, psychically mediated foresight. This is a signal that matter can do the same thing, if it's from bit is true, right? And then he also talks about quantum retrocausality and all that good stuff. So look, this is the section of the new book that everyone's talking about, okay? Where Lakatski says OSAP never ended, but converted to Kona Blue. This is interesting because if you read the forward, the extra page that AARO added to the Kona Blue slides, which screws up my whole, uh, you know, presentation. Slide 9 is really slide 8. If you look at that paper, it says that, oh, this was a proposed special access program, and it was declined, and it never became anything more than a PowerPoint slide, right? But Lukatsky is essentially saying that's not true. So either Arrow is lying, or the person who wrote that was misinformed and lied too. Uh, and again, what does he mean by Kona Blue, right? It looks like he's saying OSAP never ended. It just turned into Kona Blue, and so he's saying that OSAP is still going. It's just going under another name, and we just, you know, looked at the slides and read esoterically their meaning, which is very interesting. So we're going to find out more about this, obviously, because every time he does a book, he does a show with Forbell and Knapp. But yeah, I can't wait to get into this book. Remember, like I always say, consciousness is not classified. Look, by the way, read the description of this video, because I'm going to have not just my big, giant, beautiful prompt. I'm not just going to have the giant, big, beautiful prompt, but I'm also going to have a link to the Kona Blue slides. I'm also going to have a link to previous episode I did on Kona Blue. And the book, I didn't mention this in the show, but the book basically says that remote communication is telepathy. It doesn't use the term remote communication, it uses the term telepathy. But again, if you look at the Kona Blue slides, it uses the term remote communication, but it does not use the term telepathy. And in the video I'm going to add the link to at the bottom in the description, you're going to see how I showed through, previously declassified FOIA, yes, remote communication is telepathy. So, anyways, with that, remember, consciousness is not classified. Thank you for watching this show. It's growing, and that's exciting. I love making these videos. So, if you love watching them, uh, keep watching them, because this is so much fun. Good night.